I heard it. Clear as day. Why is she even still alive? And then that little laugh. Not loud. Not bold. Just enough to let you know it wasn't an accident. I was standing outside the backyard gate holding a glass dish of peach cobbler I'd made from scratch. Still warm. Still smelling like brown sugar and cinnamon. For a second I thought maybe I misheard. Then I heard my daughter-in-law's voice again. I mean seriously. She just lingers. Lingers. Like I was a bad smell that wouldn't leave the room. My hand tightened around the dish, but I didn't drop it. Didn't cry. Didn't storm off. No. I pushed the gate open. The hinges squeaked, and suddenly the music and laughter hit me full force. Someone had a speaker blasting a remix so loud my ribs could feel it. String lights were hung up across the patio. Ethan was at the grill flipping burgers like he was hosting the 4th of July. Nobody saw me at first. Then Brianna turned. "Oh, Mrs. Bennett. We didn't know you were coming." "Didn't know. My son lives 12 minutes from me." "I brought cobbler," I said. Nobody reached for it. So I carried it across the yard myself and set it down on the long folding table covered in one of those cheap plastic red tablecloths that flap in the wind. Ethan raised his beer. "To family," he said. Glasses clinked. Nobody looked at me. Not one. My grandkids ran past me twice. Didn't slow down. Didn't say hi. Didn't even blink. I used to keep a drawer in my house full of stickers and candy just for them. Used to babysit whenever Brianna needed a mental health day. Apparently I'd become optional. Brianna walked over eventually, smiling that tight little camera smile she uses when she's pretending to be gracious. "Do you want a plate?" "I'm good." She nodded fast, relieved I wasn't asking for anything. I sat on a folding chair near the fence. It wobbled like it wasn't sure it wanted to hold me. Ethan laughed at something Brianna said. And then I heard it again in my head. Why is she even still alive? I stayed the entire party. That's the part nobody would expect. I stayed. I stacked plates when people were done eating. Wiped down the sticky table. Picked up empty soda cans from the grass. When the sun started setting and the music turned softer, I picked up my empty cobbler dish. Barely touched and walked to my car. No yelling. No tears. Just something shifting inside me. The next morning I made coffee in the smallest pot I owned. 1 cup. Sat at the kitchen table where Ethan used to do homework when he was 8. Back when he'd ask me to check his spelling words and tell him he was the smartest kid in the world. Back then he needed me. Now, I was background noise. The house across the street from them, the one with the new patio furniture and the fancy outdoor kitchen, started with my retirement money. $40,000. Just to help you get started, I'd said. No strings attached. I meant it at the time. That morning I opened my filing cabinet. It had been years since I'd touched those folders. But I knew exactly where the one I wanted was. Ethan House. I pulled it out and sat down slowly. I wasn't angry. Anger is loud. What I felt was quiet. Cold. Clear. And somewhere deep down, something inside me said, enough. But here's the thing about enough. You don't realize you've reached it until you start making moves. And the first move I made? It wasn't emotional. It was legal. And nobody in that backyard had any idea what was coming next. I didn't call my son. I didn't call a friend. I called a woman who reads contracts for fun. Her name was Margaret Hale. We'd met years ago at a community fundraiser after her husband passed. Quiet woman. Sharp eyes. The kind of person who listens more than she talks, which usually means she knows more than she says. When she answered, I kept it simple. "I have questions about my estate." She didn't ask what happened. She just said, "Bring everything." The next morning, I dressed like I was going somewhere important. As I was. Navy slacks. Cream blouse. The pearl earrings I hadn't worn since Ethan's wedding. When you're about to change the direction of your life, you don't show up in house slippers. Margaret's office smelled like lemon cleaner and paper. Not new paper, old paper. The kind that holds decisions. She motioned for me to sit and opened the folder I'd brought. 40,000 gift, she said quietly as she scanned. No repayment agreement. No lien. No shared title. I know. The house is legally theirs. I figured. She looked up then, studied my face. But this isn't about the house, is it? No, it wasn't. It was about something much bigger. Who currently has power of attorney? She asked. My son. And is he listed as beneficiary on your accounts? Yes. And executor of your will? Yes. She nodded slowly. All of that can be changed. Something in my chest shifted. Changed. It sounded simple when she said it. Like swapping out curtains. But this wasn't curtains. This was control. You can revoke power of attorney immediately, she continued. You can update your will. You can place your home into a living trust. You can change beneficiaries on every account. And he would have no say? No. The word landed heavy. For years, I had operated under this silent assumption that motherhood was permanent leverage. That because I gave him life, he'd carry respect for mine. I was wrong. Margaret slid a legal pad across the desk. Tell me what you want. That question almost broke me, because for so long what I wanted hadn't mattered. I took a breath. I want control of my life back. She didn't smile. She just started writing. We began with the power of attorney. Revocation paperwork printed. She explained each line. Calm. Clear. If something happens to you medically, you'll need a new designated agent. I'll choose one later, I said. Then she pulled out my existing will. Your son is sole executor and primary beneficiary. Remove him. She paused. Completely. Yes. There it was again, that tiny moment where someone checks if you're sure. I was. Do you want to leave him anything? I thought about the barbecue. The laugh. Lingers. I already did, I said. Margaret didn't react. She simply crossed out his name. Next we discussed the house. You can't take back the gift, she said. But you can decide what happens to your own property. I want my house placed into a trust. For whom? When I pass, sell it. Donate the proceeds. 2. There was only one answer. The women's transitional shelter on Brookside Avenue. I'd stayed there once. A lifetime ago. Before Ethan was born. I'd left with nothing but a suitcase and a promise to myself that my son would never feel instability. Funny how that works. Margaret nodded. That's very doable. We spent 2 hours reviewing assets, savings accounts, investment portfolios, life insurance. Every place his name appeared. Every place it would be removed. With every document she adjusted, I felt something strange. Not anger. Not revenge. Alignment. When the final draft was printed, she turned the papers toward me. Once you sign, this becomes official. Picked up the pen. It felt heavier than usual. I signed slowly, deliberately. No shaking hands. No tears. Just ink. When we were done, she handed me a slim folder. Keep this somewhere secure. I stood to leave. At the door, she said something that stayed with me. Most people don't act when they're hurt. They react. You're acting. Outside, the air felt sharper, clearer. I sat in my car for a moment before starting the engine. For years, I've been adjusting myself to fit into rooms where I wasn't welcome. Shrinking. Softening. Swallowing things that tasted bitter. But this wasn't about shrinking anymore. This was about boundaries. When I got home, my phone was blinking. 3 missed calls. Ethan. 1 voicemail. Mom. Brianna says you left weird last night. Call me. Weird. That's what he called dignity. I deleted the voicemail. Then I opened my address book. Flipped to E. Ethan Bennett. I drew a line through it. Not out of hatred. Out of clarity. And clarity, that's dangerous when you've been underestimated. That night, I slept without waking up once. No pacing. No replaying conversations in my head. Just rest. The next morning I made another decision. One that would make sure nobody ever walked into my home again like they owned it. And when Ethan found out about that one, he finally showed up at my door. I called the locksmith Tuesday morning. Young guy. Polite. Probably mid-20s. Didn't ask questions. Just replacing the deadbolts, he asked. Front and back, I said. And make sure they're good. He worked quietly. Metal scraped. Screws turned. The old locks dropped into his toolbox like something being retired. When he handed me the new keys, they felt cold in my palm. I made 4 copies. One in my purse. One in a fireproof box. One with my neighbor Carol. One in my bank safe. Control doesn't shout. Clicks. That afternoon I went to the credit union. The branch smelled like printer ink and carpet cleaner. The manager, a woman named Denise, led me into her glass office. How can I help you today? I need to review authorized users on my accounts. She typed for a moment. You have 1 cosigner and 1 authorized cardholder. Ethan Bennett. I didn't flinch. Remove him. Her fingers paused. Completely. Yes. Cancel his card. Change online access. New security questions. Lock the account so changes can only be made in person. She nodded slowly and began typing. Every keystroke felt like a boundary being drawn in permanent marker. While she worked, I stared at the plant on her desk. Heart-shaped leaves trailing down the pot. I used to have one just like it in Ethan's nursery. He once tried to eat the dirt. I laughed so hard I nearly dropped him. Funny what you remember when you're cutting someone out of your finances. Denise slid the forms toward me. Once you sign, he won't have access to anything. I signed. Again steady hand. No drama. When I walked out of that bank, I didn't feel powerful. I felt stable. There's a difference. That evening my doorbell rang. Not a knock. A press and hold ring like someone trying to force urgency. I knew it was him. I didn't open the door right away. I walked to the window beside it and stood just out of sight. Mom, he called. I know you're home. He sounded annoyed. Not worried. Not sorry. Annoyed. I opened the door halfway, chain still on. Yes. His eyes dropped immediately to the new deadbolt. You changed the locks? Yes. Why would you do that? I held his gaze. Because I can. He blinked. This is ridiculous. Is it? You're acting like something major happened. I tilted my head slightly. Didn't it? He ran a hand through his hair. Frustration creeping in. Brianna didn't mean anything by that comment. I let silence hang there. She was joking. A joke has a punchline, I said. That wasn't one. His jaw tightened. You weren't supposed to hear it. There it was. Not I'm sorry. Not that was wrong. You weren't supposed to hear it. That's the problem, I said quietly. He stepped closer to the door. So what? You're cutting me off over one bad afternoon. One afternoon. I almost laughed. Do you really think that was one afternoon? He frowned. What are you talking about? Years, Ethan. His name felt different in my mouth now. Less tender. Years of being tolerated. Of being placed at the edge of the table. Of being called when you needed babysitting, but not when you were celebrating something real. That's not fair. No. He shifted his weight. Defensive now. Brianna feels like you judge her. I don't. You make comments sometimes. I ask questions. It feels the same to her. And there it was. My existence felt like criticism. You removed me from the bank account, he asked suddenly. So that's what brought him here. I did. Mom, that's extreme. Is it? You're overreacting. No, I said calmly. I'm reacting appropriately. His voice sharpened. You're my mother. Yes. You're supposed to be there for me. I looked at him carefully. And who's supposed to be there for me? He didn't answer. He just stared. like the concept had never occurred to him. "I've always supported you," he said finally. "I know. Then why are you doing this?" "Because support isn't ownership." That one landed. His shoulders stiffened. "So what now?" he asked. "You're rewriting everything?" "Yes." He scoffed. "This is about money." "No," I said evenly. "It's about dignity." Silence again. He glanced past me into the hallway like he expected to see the old family photos still lined up on the side table. Most of them were already packed. "You're going to regret this," he muttered. "I don't think so." His eyes searched my face, like he was trying to find the version of me that would back down. That woman wasn't standing there anymore. "You're choosing pride over family," he said. I shook my head slowly. "I'm choosing myself." He stepped back from the door. "This is insane." "Maybe." But my voice didn't shake. He stood there another few seconds, waiting for me to soften, to apologize, to say this had all gone too far. I didn't. Eventually, he turned and walked down the driveway. I watched him get into his car, watched him sit there for a moment before pulling away. My hands didn't tremble until after he was gone. Not from fear, from release. When I closed the door, the sound echoed through the house. Solid, certain. I leaned back against it and exhaled slowly. For years, I'd adjusted my tone, my opinions, my presence to avoid rocking the boat. Now, the boat could rock. I wasn't drowning anymore. That night, I pulled out my will again. There was one more change I needed to make. And this one would hit harder than the bank account ever could. Because when Ethan found out where my house was going, that's when things would truly explode. 3 days after Ethan showed up at my door, I went back to Margaret's office. The paperwork was ready. The trust documents sat stacked neatly in front of her, clipped, tabbed, organized like a quiet little revolution. "Once this is recorded," she said, "your home transfers into the Bennett Living Trust. You'll retain full control while you're alive. Upon your passing, the house will be sold and proceeds distributed per your instructions." "And those instructions are final?" "Yes." I nodded. She slid the final page toward me. "Sign here." I signed. Just like that. 40 years in that house. Every scraped knee, every science fair project, every Christmas morning with Ethan racing down the hallway in mismatched pajamas. Now legally protected. Not for him. For something bigger. The Brookside Women's Shelter. I hadn't told Margaret the full story before. But this time I did. "I lived there once," I said quietly. Her pen paused. "Before Ethan was born. His father left when I was 3 months pregnant. I had nowhere to go." She didn't interrupt. "They gave me a cot, a hot meal, and 2 weeks to breathe. 2 weeks was all I needed to find work." Margaret's voice softened. "Does your son know?" "No. I hadn't told him because I didn't want him to feel unstable. Didn't want him to carry the weight of how close we'd come to not making it. But maybe that was the mistake. Maybe protecting him from struggle made him forget what sacrifice looked like." When I left the office, I felt steady, resolved. But I knew something. Secrets don't stay quiet long when money is involved. The call came Friday afternoon. Not from Ethan. From Brianna. I stared at her name on the screen for a full 10 seconds before answering. "Yes." Her tone was sugary sweet. "Hi, Mrs. Bennett. I just wanted to clear the air." I didn't respond. "I think things got blown out of proportion the other day." "Did they?" She hesitated. "Well, Ethan said you removed him from your accounts. Direct. No warm-up." "Yes. That feels extreme." It felt necessary. There was a pause. Then, "Is everything okay with you? Health-wise?" There it was. The subtle implication. Maybe she's not thinking clearly. "I'm perfectly fine," I said calmly. Another pause. "Well, Ethan's just worried. You've been making some big decisions." "I have. And we just want to make sure you're not being influenced." I almost laughed. Influenced. By who? Myself? I'm quite capable of making my own choices, I replied. Her tone shifted slightly. Less sweet now. Ethan mentioned something about you changing your will. So he'd already dug. Yes. To what extent? That's private. Silence. Then she said it. You wouldn't cut your only son out. Not a question. A statement. I let that sit. You'd be surprised what a mother is capable of when she realizes she's optional. Her breath hitched just slightly. That's not fair. Fair wasn't the goal. She didn't like that. I could hear it. Well, she said carefully, I think we should all sit down and talk this through. There it was. Not apology. Not accountability. A negotiation. I'm not negotiating my dignity, I said. Her tone hardened. You're hurting your grandchildren. That one hit. Low blow. I've never hurt them. You're creating instability. No, I said softly. I'm correcting imbalance. She didn't respond for a second. Then, Ethan is devastated. Pictured him. Probably pacing. Probably angry. Devastated because access was revoked. Not because his wife disrespected his mother. I didn't do this to devastate him, I said. I did this because I finally understood my position. And what position is that? Temporary convenience. The line went quiet. She recovered quickly. Well, I hope you reconsider. Because once things are said and done, they can't always be undone. I know. I ended the call. That night I couldn't sleep. Not because I doubted myself, but because of the grandchildren. Lily is 12. Smart. Observant. Too old to miss tension. Noah's 8. Still innocent enough to think adults always tell the truth. Would they be told I was unstable? Selfish? Dramatic? Probably. That's how these stories go. The next afternoon there was a knock at my door. Not aggressive. Soft. I opened it. And my heart cracked just a little. It was Lily. Alone. She stood there with her backpack still on. Hi, Grandma. I swallowed. Hi, sweetheart. Is everything okay? She nodded. I rode my bike. My chest tightened. That's 2 miles. Does your mom know you're here? She hesitated. Not exactly. Of course not. I stepped aside. Come in. She walked inside slowly, looking around like she hadn't been there in months. Dad said you're mad. I'm not mad, I said gently. She looked up at me. Are you sick? There it was again. The narrative forming. No. Mom said you're making strange choices. I knelt down so we were eye level. Do you think I seem strange? She studied my face. No. Then trust that. She nodded slowly. We sat at the kitchen table. The same one where her father used to sit. Are you going to stop loving us? She asked quietly. That one almost undid me. Never. Even if you and Dad are fighting? I'm not fighting him. I'm setting boundaries. She frowned. What's that? It's when you decide how you're allowed to be treated. She thought about that. Then she said something that made my stomach drop. Dad said you're punishing him. I leaned back slowly. Do you think I'm punishing him? She shrugged. I don't know. He looks stressed. Stress. Interesting word. Lily, I said gently. Sometimes when people lose control over something, they call it punishment. She absorbed that quietly. Then she reached across the table and squeezed my hand. I like coming here. My throat tightened. You're always welcome. She hesitated. Even if Dad gets mad? I held her gaze. Especially then. She smiled faintly. But as she left an hour later, I knew something. This wasn't just about money anymore. This was about narrative. And Ethan? He wasn't going to let himself look like the villain. Which means soon, he was going to make a move. And the next one wouldn't be a polite knock at my door. It happened on a Sunday. Of course it did. Because nothing says we're concerned about you like a surprise ambush before dinner. I was watering the hydrangeas when I saw two cars pull into my driveway. Ethan's SUV. And behind it, Brianna's parents' sedan. I didn't rush inside. I didn't panic. I turned off the hose, coiled it neatly, and waited. Ethan got out first. Jaw tight. Shoulders stiff. Brianna stepped out slowly, sunglasses on even though it was cloudy. Behind them came her parents, Richard and Paula, wearing the exact expressions people wear when they think they're about to fix something broken. I opened the front door before they could knock. "Well," I said evenly, "this feels official." Ethan exhaled sharply. "Mom, we need to talk." "All of you." "Yes." I stepped aside. "Fine. Let's talk." They filed into my living room like a committee. Nobody sat until I did. "Interesting." Ethan started. "You've been making drastic decisions." "Correct." "You removed me from your accounts." "Yes." "You changed your will." "Yes." "And you didn't discuss it with anyone." I folded my hands in my lap. "It's my will." Paula leaned forward. "We're just concerned," she said gently. "These kinds of sudden changes can sometimes indicate stress or confusion." There it was again. The suggestion. Fragility. Instability. "I'm neither stressed nor confused," I replied calmly. Richard cleared his throat. "From our perspective, it looks like you're isolating yourself." "I changed my financial structure," I said. "I didn't join a cult." Brianna sighed loudly. "This isn't funny." "I'm not joking." Ethan ran a hand through his hair. "You're blowing up our family over one comment." "No," I said quietly. "I'm responding to a pattern." "What pattern?" he snapped. I held his gaze. "Years of being tolerated instead of respected." "That's not true." "Isn't it?" Silence. Brianna crossed her arms. "You've never liked me." "That's not accurate." "You criticize everything I do." "I ask questions." "It feels like criticism." "Your feelings don't override my right to exist comfortably in my own son's life." That one landed hard. Ethan's face reddened. "This is exactly what I mean. You're being combative." "I'm being clear." Paula tried again. "Maybe we should focus on solutions." "Good idea." "I have one," I said calmly. They all looked at me. "I've secured my finances. I've updated my legal documents. I've ensured I won't be dependent on anyone who views me as lingering." Brianna's face flushed. "You weren't supposed to hear that." "I did." "And you're willing to destroy everything over that?" "Destroy." Interesting word choice. "I'm not destroying anything," I said. "I'm protecting myself." Ethan leaned forward. "What exactly did you change in your will?" That was the real question. I looked at him for a long moment. "You're no longer executor." His eyes widened. "And you're no longer beneficiary." The room went still, like oxygen had been pulled out. Brianna's mouth actually dropped open. "You can't be serious." "I am." Ethan stood up. "Where is it going?" "My estate." "Yes." I didn't rush the answer. "To the Brookside Women's Shelter." Blank stares. "What?" Brianna said. "I lived there once," I said calmly. Ethan froze. "You what?" "I was pregnant. Alone. Homeless. They helped me." His face shifted. Confusion. Shock. "You never told me that." "I didn't want you to feel the weight of it." Richard shook his head slightly. "So you're giving everything away?" "Not everything," I said. "Just what I built." Ethan's voice cracked slightly. "So I get nothing?" I met his eyes. "You already got everything." That hit deeper than I expected. He sat back down slowly. "You're punishing me." "No," I said softly. "I'm freeing myself." Brianna stood abruptly. "This is manipulative." "No," I said evenly. "Manipulation would be keeping you listed so you behave." Silence again. Heavy now. Ethan looked around the room like he'd lost orientation. "You're serious," he muttered. "Yes." He looked at me again. "And there's nothing we can say to change this?" I shook my head once. "No." Something shifted in his expression then. Not anger. Not yet. Fear. Because for the first time he realized something. I wasn't bluffing. Brianna grabbed her purse. "This is unbelievable." Paula stood too, looking disappointed, not in me. In the situation. Richard gave Ethan a tight nod. Like this had gone worse than expected. Ethan lingered. Everyone else walked toward the door. He stayed seated. When it was just us, he spoke quietly. "Do you hate me?" The question stunned me. "No." "Then why does this feel like you do?" "Because you've confused access with love." He swallowed. "You're my mother." "Yes. You're supposed to want to help me." "I did," I said softly. "For decades." He stared at the floor. "And now? Now I want peace." That hurt him more than yelling would have. He stood slowly. "If you do this, things won't go back to normal." I looked around my living room, at the photos already taken down, at the space that felt calmer than it had in years. They weren't normal to begin with. He walked out. This time no slamming doors. No shouting. Just quiet. But quiet can be dangerous. Because quiet means someone is thinking. And I knew my son well enough to understand something. He wasn't done. He wasn't going to accept this. Not the money. Not the control. Not the narrative. And when people feel cornered, they don't always respond gracefully. 3 days later, I got a certified letter in the mail. From a law firm. And that's when I realized this wasn't just emotional anymore. It was legal. The envelope was thick. Certified mail. Law firm letterhead across the top like a warning label. I didn't open it right away. I made tea first. Sat at the kitchen table. Took one steady breath. Then I slid my finger under the seal. The wording was polite. Cold. Professional. Strategic. It stated that concerns had been raised regarding my recent abrupt financial decisions. It referenced possible cognitive decline and sudden personality shifts. It suggested a voluntary medical capacity evaluation to ensure protection of all parties. Protection of all parties. Translation: they were laying groundwork. If I refused, it could escalate. If I complied, it implied doubt. And at the bottom of the page, my son's signature authorizing legal inquiry. That's the moment something inside me hardened. Not shattered. Hardened. He wasn't just hurt. He was positioning. I called Margaret immediately. She didn't sound surprised. "This is a common tactic," she said calmly. "When someone loses financial access, they sometimes challenge competency." "So he thinks I'm senile?" "No. He thinks he can scare you." That landed. "Do I have to comply?" I asked. "You're not legally required. But strategically, yes. We'll document capacity clearly and shut this down." I nodded even though she couldn't see me. "When can we schedule?" "I'll refer you to a neurologist who specializes in cognitive evaluations. Independent. Thorough. Good. Because if my son wanted to question my mind, he was about to get proof. The appointment was 3 days later. The clinic smelled like disinfectant and lavender. I sat in the waiting room surrounded by magazines about arthritis and hearing aids. Part of me wanted to laugh. Dr. Patel was calm, methodical, kind. He didn't treat me like I was fragile. He treated me like I was informed. We did memory tests, logic sequences, problem-solving exercises. He asked about current events. I answered without hesitation. Halfway through, he leaned back slightly. "May I ask why this evaluation was requested?" "My son believes I'm making irrational financial decisions." "Are you?" "No." "What prompted the changes?" "Clarity." He smiled faintly at that. 2 hours later, he closed his folder. "You show no signs of cognitive impairment," he said clearly. "In fact, Your executive functioning scores are above average for your age. Above average. I almost wanted that in writing framed on my wall. I will prepare a formal report, he added. It will be very clear. Thank you. When I walked out of that office, I didn't feel vindicated. I felt disappointed. Not in myself. In my son. Because to question someone's sanity? That's not a small move. That's escalation. That evening my phone buzzed. Lily. I answered immediately. Hi, sweetheart. She sounded quiet. Grandma, are you okay? I'm okay. Dad said you're seeing doctors. I did. Are you sick? No. Pause. He said you're confused. There it was. The narrative forming again. I kept my voice steady. Do I sound confused to you? No. Then trust your own judgment. She hesitated. Mom and Dad are fighting. That tightened something in my chest. About me? Yes. I closed my eyes for a second. I'm sorry you're hearing that. It's loud. Kids always hear more than adults think. Grandma. Yes. Did you really live in a shelter? So he told her. Selective truth, I'm sure. Yes, I said gently. A long time ago. Why didn't you tell us? I didn't want you to worry. She was quiet. Then, Dad said you're choosing strangers over family. That one hurt. But not because it was true. Because it was strategic. I'm choosing myself, I said softly. That doesn't mean I love you less. I know, she whispered. And then she said something that made my stomach drop. Dad said if you keep doing this, we might not be allowed to come over anymore. Ah, there it is. Isolation. Weaponizing access. I kept my tone even. Lily, listen to me very carefully. No matter what happens between adults, you are always welcome here. But what if Dad says no? I exhaled slowly. Then we'll find another way. She didn't respond right away. Then, okay. We hung up. And for the first time since this started, I felt anger. Not explosive anger. Protective anger. Because involving the kids, that crossed a line. 2 days later, Margaret called. The evaluation report is complete, she said. And it's airtight. No cognitive decline. Clear decision-making capacity. Strong executive function. We'll send it to their attorney. Good. There's something else. My stomach tightened slightly. They filed an inquiry about undue influence. I blinked. Undue influence from who? That's the interesting part, she said. They're suggesting someone may be pressuring you. I almost laughed. I live alone. I know. But legally they're fishing. So what now? Now we respond firmly. And we document everything. Everything. Every call. Every visit. Every threat. This wasn't emotional anymore. This was strategic. 3 nights later, Ethan showed up again. No doorbell this time. Just knocking. Hard. I opened the door. No chain. I wasn't afraid. You're really doing this? He demanded. Yes. You went to a neurologist? Yes. For what? For proof. He stared at me. Proof of what? That I'm not confused. His jaw tightened. So now I'm the villain? You made that choice. He stepped inside without asking. I'm trying to protect you. From what? From making a mistake you can't undo. I looked at him carefully. Are you worried about my regret? He hesitated. Yes. No. He was worried about losing leverage. You challenged my capacity, I said evenly. Do you understand how serious that is? He didn't respond. You suggested I might be mentally unfit. I was concerned. You were threatened. That hit. He stepped closer. You're tearing this family apart. No, I said quietly. I'm revealing what was already cracked. Silence. You'd really rather give everything away than help your own son? I met his eyes. You don't need help. His face flushed. That's not the point. It is. His voice rose. You're selfish. There it was. The word people use when boundaries inconvenience them. I spent my entire life being selfless, I replied calmly. This is new for you. Not for me. He stared at me like he didn't recognize me. Maybe he didn't. Maybe I didn't either. And then he said it. If you go through with this, don't expect things to ever be the same. I tilted my head slightly. They already aren't. He stood there for a moment longer. Then he turned and walked out. But this time, it didn't feel like a retreat. It felt like recalculation. And the next move he made wouldn't be about money. It would be about access. And when he tried to control who I was allowed to see, that's when I made the boldest decision yet. One that would change everything. The text came on a Monday morning. Short, controlled, strategic. Ethan, for now it's best if the kids don't come over. We need space until you're thinking clearly. I read it twice, then once more. Not because I didn't understand it, because I did. Crystal clear. This wasn't about space. This was leverage. I set the phone down slowly, made coffee, sat at the table, and let the quiet settle around me. If you've ever been cut off from someone you love, you know the first instinct. Panic, call, argue, beg, explain. I did none of those, because panic feeds control. Instead, I opened my laptop, typed 3 words into the search bar. Grandparent visitation rights. I wasn't looking to sue. I was looking to understand. In our state, courts consider the best interest of the child, especially when there's a pre-existing close relationship. And there was. I had school pickup records, doctor appointment logs, text messages arranging sleepovers, birthday photos, Christmas mornings. I wasn't some distant relative. I was built into their routine, and suddenly removed. That matters. I closed the laptop. I wasn't going to threaten legal action. Not yet. But knowledge. Knowledge stabilizes you. 2 days passed. No calls. No messages. Not from Lily. Not from Noah. I didn't reach out. That was the hardest part. Because chasing makes you look desperate. And desperate people get dismissed. On Wednesday afternoon I got a call. Not from family. From Carol, my neighbor. Hey, she said cautiously. I didn't want to repeat gossip, but you should probably know. My stomach tightened. Know what? I was at the grocery store. Ran into Brianna's mom. Of course. And she mentioned you've been having episodes. Episodes. I actually smiled. What kind of episodes? Confusion. Mood swings. Paranoia about money. So that's the angle. Paint me unstable publicly. Frame the will change as evidence. Control the narrative before I could. Thanks for telling me, I said calmly. You okay? I'm fine. And I was. Because here's the thing about smear campaigns. They only work if you react emotionally. I didn't. Instead, I made an appointment. Not with the doctor. With the director of Brookside Women's Shelter. Her name was Angela Ruiz. Warm eyes. Firm handshake. The building looked better than I remembered. Renovated. Expanded. Hopeful. We sat in her office. I don't usually meet donors personally at this stage, she said. But Margaret spoke highly of you. I nodded. I'm not here for recognition. I know. She studied me for a moment. May I ask what changed? Clarity, I said again. She smiled faintly. I told her a shortened version of my story. Not for sympathy. For context. When I finished, she leaned back. You're not the first woman to give back after building stability, she said. But most do it quietly. I plan to. That's when the idea formed. Clear. Strategic. Unexpected. I'd like to volunteer, I added. She blinked. You don't have to. I want to. She studied my face. You understand it's not glamorous work. I didn't survive glamorous work. That made her laugh. And just like that, I had somewhere to go. Somewhere meaningful. Somewhere that didn't treat me like background furniture. Friday afternoon, I was helping sort donated clothes when my phone buzzed. Lily. I stepped outside to answer. Hi, sweetheart. She sounded like she'd been crying. Grandma, Dad said we can't see you for a while. I know. He said you're not safe right now. There it was. Escalation. Not confused. Not stressed. Unsafe. Do I feel unsafe to you? I asked gently. No. Have I ever hurt you? No. Then hold on to that. She sniffed. I miss you. My chest tightened. I miss you too. Silence. Then she whispered something that made everything click into place. Mom says you're trying to embarrass us. Embarrass. Oh. So they were worried about perception, community, image. That's why they'd started whispering. That's why they'd painted instability. Because if I donated publicly, it would contradict their story. And that's when I realized something. They were scared. Not of losing money. Of losing face. I crouched down on the sidewalk outside the shelter. Lily, I said gently. Sometimes when adults feel exposed, they try to control the story. Are you exposing them? No, I said honestly. I'm just telling the truth. She was quiet. Will you stop loving Dad? No. That answer surprised even me. I love him, I continued softly. I just don't accept being disrespected. She breathed out slowly. I wish everyone would stop fighting. So do I. After we hung up, I stood there for a long moment. Then I walked back inside. Angela looked up. You okay? Yes. And I meant it. Because clarity removes fear. That weekend, something unexpected happened. Angela approached me while we were organizing supply shelves. We're hosting our annual fundraising dinner next month, she said. It's small. Local donors. Community leaders. I nodded. And we'd like to honor you. I froze. No. She smiled. Why not? I don't want attention. It's not attention, she said gently. It's narrative. Narrative. There's that word again. You don't owe anyone your story, she continued. But telling it could help other women. I thought about Brianna's grocery store whispers. About episodes. About unsafe. About cutting me off from my grandchildren. Public instability narrative. Or public resilience narrative. You don't fight rumors in the dark. You step into light. I'll think about it, I said. Sunday evening I got another text from Ethan. We need to formalize boundaries. Please stop contacting the kids directly. Formalize boundaries. Interesting choice of words. I responded calmly. I have not initiated contact. Lily called me. 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Reappeared. We're trying to create stability. Stability. By isolating them from someone who loves them? I didn't argue. I didn't escalate. I simply typed. I am volunteering at Brookside. They're hosting a public fundraiser next month. You and the kids are welcome to attend. 3 dots again. Then nothing. No response. Because he understood something now. If I stepped into public service. If I was honored. If the community saw me clearly. The instability narrative collapses. And that's when the real power shifted. Because now, if he tried to paint me as unstable, he'd have to explain why the entire community saw something different. And Ethan hates losing control. Which means his next move would be desperate. And desperate people make mistakes. Ethan showed up the next evening. No warning text. No strategic wording. Just his car pulling into my driveway fast enough to throw gravel. I opened the door before he knocked. You're volunteering now, he demanded. Yes. At the shelter? Yes. And you're being honored? Possibly. His jaw tightened. You're doing this on purpose. Doing what? Making us look like villains. I stepped aside so he could come in. He didn't move. You think this is about image? I asked calmly. It is about image, he snapped. People are already asking questions. Ah, there it is. Not concern for me. Concern for perception. What questions? I asked. Why my mother is giving away her estate. Why she lived in a shelter and never told anyone. Why she suddenly cut off her son. The word cut off almost made me smile. I didn't cut you off, I said evenly. I removed financial access. That's the same thing. No, I said quietly. It's not. He exhaled hard. You're humiliating us. I'm telling the truth. You could have kept this private. I did. Until you questioned my sanity. Silence. That hit him. You're dragging this into public, he said. No, I replied. You did when you started whispering. His eyes flickered. So he knew. You think volunteering erases what you're doing? He asked. I'm not trying to erase anything. Then what are you trying to do? I met his gaze. Live honestly. He stared at me like that was unreasonable. You need to cancel this event, he said finally. No. You're choosing strangers over your own family. I'm choosing purpose. That's selfish. I was selfless for 40 years. He had no response to that. Instead, he pivoted. Don't expect the kids to be there. I nodded slowly. That's your decision. He hesitated. Maybe he expected me to beg. I didn't. He left without another word. But something about his posture told me one thing clearly. He was rattled. The weeks leading up to the fundraiser were peaceful. I volunteered 3 days a week. Sorted donations. Answered phones. Sat with women who needed someone to just listen. No drama. No leverage. Just humanity. Angela eventually asked if I'd be willing to share my story briefly during the event. 5 minutes, she said. That's all. I agreed. Not to defend myself. Not to counter rumors. But because somewhere out there might be another woman sitting in silence thinking she had no options. And that matters more than pride. The night of the fundraiser arrived cool and clear. The event was held in a renovated warehouse downtown. Soft string lights. Round tables with simple white linens. Local business owners. Community members. Families. Nothing flashy. Just real. I wore a navy dress I hadn't touched in years. Simple. Elegant. When I walked in, Angela greeted me with a hug. You ready? Yes. And I was. I scanned the room once. Just to check. They weren't there. Ethan. Brianna. The kids. That hurt. But it didn't break me. Dinner passed smoothly. Small conversations. Polite laughter. Then Angela stepped onto the small stage. She spoke about the shelter's mission. About safety. About rebuilding. And then she said my name. I stood. Walked to the stage. The room applauded politely. I looked out at faces I half recognized. Neighbors. Business owners. Community members who'd probably heard whispers. And I spoke. I stayed here once, I began. The room went still. I was pregnant. Alone. And very scared. No dramatics. No tears. Just truth. They gave me a place to sleep and time to figure things out. I built my life from there. I paused. My son grew up in a home I worked very hard to create. I didn't shame him. I didn't accuse. I just continued. Sometimes when we protect our children from struggle, we also protect them from understanding sacrifice. Silence. But dignity matters at every age. And independence isn't selfish. It's stability. I saw heads nodding. This shelter gave me stability once. It feels right to return the favor. That was it. No mention of wills. No mention of conflict. Just truth. The applause was stronger this time. Not loud, but warm. I stepped down. And that's when I saw her. Lily. Standing near the back of the room. Alone. My breath caught. She walked toward me slowly. I rode with Mrs. Carter, she whispered. I told Mom it was a school thing. My heart nearly burst. You shouldn't have to lie, I said softly. I wanted to hear you. Her eyes were shining. You weren't embarrassing, she said. You were brave. I swallowed. Before I could respond, a familiar voice cut through the room. Lily. Ethan. He was standing at the entrance. Face tight. Brianna behind him. The room shifted. Tension like electricity. Lily stiffened. I told you not to come, Ethan said sharply. I wanted to, she replied quietly. His eyes flicked to me, then to the crowd, then back to the stage banner with the shelter's name printed clearly. The narrative had flipped. He couldn't call me unstable here. Not in a room full of witnesses. Not after a calm, coherent speech. You're making this worse, he muttered. I didn't invite conflict, I replied evenly. You're dragging private issues into public spaces. No, I said quietly. You did that when you questioned my mind. The room was silent now. Watching. Not gossiping. Observing. Power doesn't shout. Stand still. Brianna stepped forward. Lily, let's go. Lily didn't move. I want to stay, she said. The room felt like it was holding its breath. Ethan's jaw tightened. You don't get to decide that. And that's when something unexpected happened. Angela stepped beside me. Calm. Professional. Sir, she said politely, this is a community event. Your daughter is safe. Safe. That word again. Only this time it wasn't weaponized. It was factual. Ethan looked around. At the faces. At the space. At the calm. He realized something. This wasn't his battlefield. And for the first time since this started, he had no leverage. 5 minutes, he said finally to Lily. She nodded. He stepped back toward the entrance. Not victorious. Not dominant. Just smaller. Lily turned to me. I'm proud of you, she whispered. And in that moment, everything shifted. Not legally. Not financially. Emotionally. Because the one person who mattered most in that room understood. And when a child sees truth clearly, adults lose the power to rewrite it. But I knew something. Ethan wasn't done. Men who feel exposed don't retreat quietly. They regroup. And 3 days later, he made one final move. One that would decide everything. 3 days after the fundraiser, the knock came again. Not aggressive. Not rushed. Just deliberate. I opened the door. Ethan stood there alone. No Brianna. No kids. Just him. His face looked tired. Not angry. Not defensive. Worn down. Can I come in? He asked. That was new. Yes. He stepped inside slowly, like the house felt different now. Maybe it did. We sat at the kitchen table. The same table. The same wood grain. The same history. But something between us had changed. He didn't speak right away. Just stared at his hands. I shouldn't have questioned your mind, he said finally. The words were stiff. Practiced. But real. I didn't rush to comfort him. I know, I said. He swallowed. I panicked. Why? His jaw tightened. Because everything shifted at once. Yes. You removed me from accounts. Changed the will. Changed the locks. Started volunteering. Speaking publicly. He looked up at me. It felt like you were erasing me. There it was. Not greed. Not pure control. Fear. I wasn't erasing you, I said quietly. I was separating myself. That's the same thing. No, I said gently. It's not. He exhaled slowly. I've been under pressure. I waited. Brianna's parents helped us with the remodel. There are expectations. The mortgage is tight. The lifestyle. It's expensive. So now we were closer to truth. You were counting on inheritance, I said calmly. His silence confirmed it. That's not unreasonable, he muttered. No, I agreed. It's not. But it's not guaranteed either. He leaned back in his chair. I thought that was just how it works. Sometimes it does. And now you build your own stability. He looked at me carefully. You really mean to give it away? Yes. To strangers. To women who were once me. He shook his head slowly. You could help your grandchildren instead. I am helping them. He frowned. How? By showing them dignity doesn't expire with age. Silence. Heavy. Then he said something softer. I don't want to lose you. That landed. Because for the first time, this wasn't about money. It wasn't about control. It wasn't about image. It was about fear of distance. You're not losing me, I said. You're losing authority over me. He stared at that like it was a foreign language. I never thought of it that way. I know. He rubbed his face with both hands. I handled this badly. Yes. And Brianna. This isn't about Brianna. He looked up. It's not. No. She said what she said. But you decided how to respond. That hit deeper than blaming her ever could. Silence stretched. Then he asked the real question. Is there any way back from this? That depends. Back to what? I asked. He didn't answer right away. Back to normal. I looked around the kitchen. The packed photo frames. The empty spaces on the walls. The old normal wasn't working for me. He nodded slowly. I see that now. Do you? Yes. He hesitated. Then, I told Lily you were confused. I know. His face tightened. She corrected me. I blinked. She said, Grandma sounds clearer than anyone. I felt something warm move through my chest. She's observant, I said. She's stubborn. I smiled faintly. That too. He looked down again. She asked why we were scared of you. That surprised him. Scared? Yes. And what did you say? I didn't have an answer. Good. Because fear was exactly what it was. Fear of losing leverage. Fear of losing expectation. Fear of losing narrative control. He looked up at me again. If I apologize publicly, will you reconsider the will? There it was. Still bargaining. I didn't get angry. I didn't flinch. No. He nodded slowly. I figured. This isn't a punishment, I said calmly. It's a boundary. He absorbed that quietly. And the kids? He asked. They're welcome here. He hesitated. I shouldn't have restricted that. No, I agreed. I was trying to force you to bend. I know. Silence again. Then something shifted in his expression. Something softer. I didn't know about the shelter, he said quietly. I know. I didn't know how close we came to not making it. I didn't want you carrying that. He swallowed. You should have told me. Maybe. But hiding it didn't make me stronger, he said. It made me entitled. That was the most honest thing he'd said all night. I studied him carefully. You're not a bad man, Ethan. He blinked. You just got comfortable. He let out a long breath. I don't know how to fix this. You don't fix it, I said gently. You rebuild it. How? With respect. Silence. Then footsteps in the hallway. I turned. Lily. Standing there. She must have been listening from the entry. Ethan looked startled. Lily. I heard you, she said quietly. How long have you been home? Long enough. She walked into the kitchen slowly. Dad, she said carefully. You were wrong. He stiffened slightly. I know. You said Grandma was losing it. I shouldn't have. You said she was being selfish. He didn't respond. She looked at him steadily. She's not. The room felt suspended. Children don't perform speeches like that unless something is deeply clear to them. I don't want to pick sides, Lily continued. But I won't pretend she's wrong either. Ethan's shoulders dropped. I never meant to put you in the middle. But you did. Simple. Direct. True. He nodded slowly. You're right. She looked at me. Are you still giving the house away? Yes. She nodded once. Okay. That surprised him. That's it? He asked. She shrugged slightly. It's her house. Out of the mouths of children. Ethan looked at me. Then at Lily. Then back at me. And something shifted. Not defeat. Acceptance. I can't say I'm happy about it, he admitted. I don't expect you to be. But I can't say you're wrong either. That was as close to surrender as he was capable of. He stood slowly. I'll tell Brianna to stop talking. That would be wise. He almost smiled. Almost. He walked toward the door. Then paused. Will you still come to Noah's baseball game next week? That question mattered. Yes. Even after all this? Yes. He nodded slowly. Okay. When he left, the house felt different. Not lighter. Not magically healed. But honest. Lily stayed. We sat at the table quietly. Are you happy? She asked. Yes. Even though it's messy? Yes. She smiled slightly. Good. And that's when I realized something. The real inheritance wasn't money. It wasn't property. It wasn't accounts. It was modeling strength. And that? No one can contest in court. But there was still one final piece left. One conversation. One choice. Because while Ethan had stepped back, Brianna hadn't. And she wasn't the type to let go quietly. Brianna didn't come over for 2 weeks. No calls. No texts. No polite check-ins pretending nothing happened. Silence. But silence from someone like Brianna isn't surrender. It's strategy. And I knew eventually she'd want her say. It happened on a Thursday afternoon. I was trimming roses when her car pulled up. Alone. No Ethan. No kids. She stepped out slowly, sunglasses on, posture tight like she was bracing for impact. I set the shears down and waited. She walked up the driveway carefully. We need to talk, she said. I nodded once. Come inside. She hesitated at the doorway, like it felt different now. Like she wasn't walking into a space she could influence anymore. We sat in the living room. She didn't waste time. You embarrassed us. There it was. Still image-focused. I told my story, I replied calmly. You made it look like we don't care about you. I never said that. You didn't have to. I studied her carefully. You tried to paint me as unstable. She stiffened. We were concerned. No, I said evenly. You were threatened. Silence. Her jaw tightened. You blindsided us. I adjusted my boundaries. You could have talked to us first. Would that have changed anything? She didn't answer. Because she knew. No. What do you want from me? She finally asked. That was honest. I want respect, I said simply. She laughed once, sharp, quick. You think I don't respect you? I think you tolerated me. Her expression shifted slightly. You've always made me feel judged. I've asked questions. It felt like judgment. Your feelings don't rewrite my intentions. She folded her arms. You never liked the way we lived. I didn't like how dependent you were on assumptions. Her eyes flashed. What does that mean? It means you built a lifestyle expecting future security that wasn't yours. That hit. You were going to leave it to Ethan anyway, she said. Yes. Then why change it? Because I realized it was expected, not appreciated. Silence. Heavy now. You could have just told us that, she muttered. I didn't know it until I felt it. That stopped her. She studied me carefully. Do you hate me? She asked suddenly. That question surprised me. No. Because it feels like you do. I don't hate you, I said calmly. I just stopped bending. She swallowed. You've always been strong, she said quietly. It's intimidating. There it was. The truth underneath the tension. Not dislike. Intimidation. You don't have to compete with me, I said gently. I'm not your rival. She looked down at her hands. I grew up watching my mom lose everything after my dad left, she admitted. I swore I'd never be financially unstable. Now we were closer to the core. And when you changed your will, she continued, it felt like the ground shifted. I understand that, I said. But instead of asking me about it, she said quietly, I attacked you. Yes. Silence stretched between us. Then she said something I didn't expect. I shouldn't have said what I said at the barbecue. No excuses. No, you weren't supposed to hear it. Just ownership. I know, I replied. I was frustrated. I felt watched. Judged. I wasn't watching you, I said gently. I was watching my son. That softened something in her expression. You think I control him. I think you influence him. That's marriage. Yes, I agreed. But it shouldn't erase his spine. That made her almost smile. Almost. She looked around the room. It feels different here, she said quietly. It is. How? I'm not waiting to be invited into my own peace anymore. She sat with that, then finally asked the question she'd been circling. Is there any chance you'll change your mind? No. She nodded slowly. I figured. But, I added, that doesn't mean we can't rebuild something healthier. She looked up. You'd still want us around? I want relationships based on respect, not expectation. Silence again. Then she exhaled slowly. Lily admires you. I admire her. She said you're the strongest person she knows. That hit deeper than any insult ever had. She's stronger than she realizes, I said softly. Brianna stood slowly. I can't promise I'll agree with everything you do. I don't need you to. But I can promise I won't question your sanity again. That's a start. She nodded, then hesitated at the door. I don't want to be your enemy. You never were, I said. You were insecure. That landed. She didn't argue. She just nodded once and walked to her car. Not defeated. Not victorious. Just recalibrating. The next Saturday I went to Noah's baseball game. Ethan waved when he saw me. Not awkward. Not forced. Just normal. Brianna nodded politely. Lily ran over and hugged me tight. Grandma. I hugged her back. You ready to cheer? Always. We sat in the bleachers. Simple. Uncomplicated. And I realized something. Peace isn't loud. It doesn't announce itself. Just settles. Months passed. The legal challenges stopped. The whispers faded. The shelter expanded a new wing. I continued volunteering. Not for image. Not for statement. But because it mattered. Ethan adjusted. He worked more. Budgeted smarter. Stopped assuming. Our conversations became honest. Sometimes uncomfortable. But honest. And Lily? She grew taller. Stronger. Sharper. One afternoon she asked me something that stayed with me. Grandma, if you hadn't changed your will, would everyone still respect you? I thought about that carefully. No, I said. Why not? Because sometimes people only respect what they might lose. She nodded slowly. That's messed up. Yes, I agreed softly. It is. She smiled. I won't be like that. I know. Years from now, when I'm gone, the house will be sold. The money will go where it's meant to. And my grandchildren? They won't inherit property. They'll inherit perspective. They'll remember that I didn't crumble when I was dismissed. That I didn't beg for relevance. That I didn't allow myself to be treated like background noise. Because here's the truth nobody tells you. You don't age out of dignity. You don't expire at the edge of someone else's comfort. And you are never required to shrink to make your own children feel taller. I didn't destroy my family. I recalibrated it. And sometimes, that's the bravest thing you can do. They asked why I was still alive. Now they understand exactly why.